Hello, everybody, and welcome to Papercuts, our monthly show that helps you learn more about our Adobe Document Services and how you can automate documents within a variety of different workflows. I'm Ben Vandenberg, Principal Technical Product Evangelist here at Adobe, and I'm going to be joined in just a few moments by our other experts here to talk about some of the main topics of today, which is around some of the best practices and tips using the Adobe PDF Services SDKs. So if you're joining us for the first time today, I want to just kind of level set and let you know a little bit about what we're all about here. So Adobe Document Services is a set of APIs that are available for you to be able to automate any of the different actions across a document lifecycle. So many of you might be familiar with things like Adobe Acrobat, which we have a lot of the actions that people use in Acrobat available as part of PDF services. But from the beginning of when you're needing to create a document and generate it based on data, we have our document generation API, which allows you to be able to create Word-based templates, add conditional sections and logic within your templates, and then merge data from JSON into there to create PDF or Word documents. Then you can capture signatures securely on those documents or other types of documents using Adobe Sign, where you can also do things like identity verification, embed web forms into online web applications, or even send documents out in bulk. The PDF Services API is, as I mentioned, Adobe Acrobat before. It's a lot of those different actions like OCR, being able to split or combine PDFs. All of that is part of our PDF Services API there. Then you have PDF Embed API, which is around being able to embed PDF viewing experiences into your web applications and be able to also get analytics on that. And then we have the PDF Extract API, which is all about being able to take your PDFs and turn it into JSON data so you can republish your data or reuse any of the content in a PDF in other formats. We also see this as a great way to be able to automate by content-based automation to maybe do things like split PDFs based on certain parameters and things like that. So all of these are different APIs that we make available to help with automation, and we even make it available in tools like Microsoft Power Automate, so you can use that with low-code type of tools. All right, so if you want to learn more about this, please also go over to adobe.com/go/document services, where you can learn about all of our different APIs. You can also try a trial to give it a try yourself. So in the session today, we're going to be talking about a couple of news and updates, some tips and tricks, and this is all about you.
Sorry to interrupt. We have some terrible audio issues coming through on your audio. It's like there's some sort of an echo and scratch. So interesting. Yeah, and it has been getting progressively worse from the start. So I thought it might clear up, but you might want to check on. There's some sort of echo going on. I can jump in, and Ray and I can take it from here if you need to make some corrections.
Why don't you take it from here, and I will have a quick look.
Okay. Let's go ahead and do that. Ray, you want to jump in?
Yep.
Okay. Actually, Ben, could you roll that back to the previous slide? Thank you. Okay. So in terms of introductions, that was Ben Vandenberg, who's trying to fix his audio issues right now. And hopefully, Ray, can you confirm that the audio is not at the service we're using? Are you hearing me clearly?
I'm hearing you clearly, and Ben was perfect up until we began to stream. So
exactly, yeah, something else is going on. Okay, so Ray, I'm also hearing you perfectly, so I think we're okay. So my name is Joel Geraci, and Ray, if you could, I'm sorry, and I work with the team as an evangelist. I'm a consultant to Adobe, so I've been working with the Adobe APIs for almost 3 decades now, which is a little disturbing. Ray, if you could jump in and introduce yourself, then we can go into the news and updates.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm Ray Camden. I'm also one of the evangelists on this team. I've been working with these services for 6 months, so not quite a couple decades, but getting there.
Okay, great. Ben, if you could flip the slide. I know you're there. You go. Oh, was it asked? Oh, yes. So, sorry, I'm not used to being the host. So this is a live event, and while we do have content to present to you, the most important part of this is to have you guys actually ask your questions. So if you are using our APIs, whether that be the PDF Services APIs or the Embed API, please feel free to post your questions, and would like to deal with those towards the beginning, and then the content that we have can wait until your questions are answered and your questions come in. If you have questions during, we'll wait to an appropriate time to pause, and then we'll bring in your questions. Or if it's something that we can just simply answer in the chat pod, since Ray is going to be doing most of the presentation today, I'll be able to respond to your questions. Okay, Ben is back. Let's see how his audio is. Ben, speak.
Can you hear me?
And it sounds perfect now.
Okay, well, that's why you have backup mics, right?
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to drop back out now and let you continue where you were. That's exactly where we were. So I'm gonna drop off, or actually, I might as well stay because I've got a news item.
Yeah. So we're just going to give a quick update on a couple of the news items of what's going on, and a couple of tips of where we might suggest that you go to learn more about a few things. So to start off here, one of the first ones we have is that there's actually an article up on the Adobe Tech blog, which we can go check out here. And if you are not familiar with the Adobe Tech blog, go ahead over to adobe.com/go/DC Tech blog, and I'll drop in the link in just a moment here. But within here, you can see that Wes here has actually created a way that you can use Adobe Launch. And if you're not familiar with what Adobe Launch is it's our tag management solution that Adobe makes, that you can use that to be able to then have a script that runs on any of the pages on your website. So when you click on that, you can then have it render using the PDF Embed API. Now, one of the reasons why you would want to do that, well, because then that gives you the analytics on the PDF to know exactly what a person viewed, how long they spent on different pages. All of that you can put into your script that you embed into PDF Embed API, so that those metrics go into there. Now, if you're also asking, well, maybe I don't have Adobe Analytics, can I use my own analytics tool? The answer is yes, because we have all of that available as JavaScript events. So if you want to push that into other services, maybe like Google Analytics or other tools like that, you can write that into your script. But this is a really cool way to be able to use that and incorporate into your tag management, so you can get much more visibility into how people are viewing PDF content on any of your different web platforms there. So I'm going to pass it over next. Joel, why don't you talk about the new schema functions as part of document generation?
Sure. Thanks, Ben. And glad to have you back with a good audio. Okay, so we recently updated the Microsoft Word add-in that allows you to author templates for the document generation API. Now, previously, what you did was you imported your JSON file into the add-in UI, and then you could add your tags to the document, and that was really simple. But you had to start with a JSON file, and typically this is something that you'd be requesting from if you were just the Word authoring the template. You'd have to get that file from the developer who's creating the connection to your system of record. Like, for example, maybe you're trying to create documents based on a table from SharePoint. Well, with this new extension, you can create your own schemas right there inside of Microsoft Word. So in this case, it kind of flips the script. So instead of having to work with the developer and what they supplied to you, you can fill in just very easy without even understanding what JSON is. You can enter your tag names, the category it might belong to if you want to have hierarchical fields, or the type of information that is. It will create the JSON structure for you, and you can pass that on to your developer and say, this is what I need, so make that, and then my template will work with what you're doing. You know, Ray wrote this article, so Ray, is there anything you want to add to that in addition to what I was discussed?
So towards the end of what I have planned, I will actually show this live, not quite as detailed as the blog post, but I'll definitely be showing a quick example of this.
Okay, great. Thank you. So back to you, Ben.
Well, one thing that I also wanted to add to that was one of the cool additions to this with the new tagger is that for some of our customers who are maybe Adobe Sign customers that predominantly just use Adobe Sign right now, you can actually use the tagger for tagging Adobe Sign tags in your documents. Because I know a lot of people maybe used to using like the text tags within Adobe Sign inside of Word documents, and it can be a learning curve to learn the different curly bracket what. So it makes it much easier for you to be able to tag documents that you're just using for Sign and for document generation all within the same tagger, and it just makes it much easier. So for some of our listeners who are coming from the Adobe Sign side, go check this out. Even if you're not quite ready to use Document Generation API yet, it's still a benefit, and it helps you with Adobe Sign as well. Okay, so we have one more, which is the PDF services with Amazon Lambda, which just came out today. So maybe Ray, do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Absolutely. So this was my first foray into using Lambda. I've been doing serverless for quite a while, but other platforms or platforms that like right on top of Lambda. So this was my exploration into using Lambda directly and using PDF services. In this article, I walk through an example where you drop a file into an S3 bucket, and then the Lambda automatically fires. And in this case, it adds a password protected value to that PDF and copies it to a new bucket. So you can imagine in the real world, you have documents coming in, they need to be protected, and you don't want to do that by hand. This article just shows a way that you can automate that entire process using AWS and Adobe PDF Services.
Awesome. And one other note there is that if you are using, if you want to use our PDF services with Amazon Lambda, you can also subscribe as pay-as-you-go through the Amazon marketplace. So just a quick way for you to be able to get started using it, using Lambda or other services, and then you can have that all billing through the same thing that you do with Amazon. Cool. So with that, let's move on to the main topic. So I'm going to hand it over to Ray to walk through some of the things with some of the tips and best practices using Adobe PDF Services SDK. Ray, take it away. The floor is yours.
Absolutely. Give me a second to share my screen and hopefully do it quick enough for y'all not to see the infinite. All right, are y'all seeing my screen? A random web page.
Nope, not yet.
Did I go too fast? Oh, sorry, I didn't actually click the share button. That's a crucial part of the sharing process, is to actually hit the share button. We all good now?
We're all good.
All right, great, cool. So let me start off real quick with an apology. This is going to be a bit haphazard. Everything I'm talking about today are things that I have encountered over the last 6 months of learning our services, learning our tools, and just playing with them. it's interesting. So it's not things that are missing from our docs per se. So I'm not bringing up anything that should be in our docs and it's just not there, but rather just kind of real world things I ran into and things that I needed to be maybe a bit more obvious to me to kind of help me learn. I'll also say that everything I'm showing today, obviously you can watch this recording later on. Again, I am going to kind of write this up in a more formal aspect. It'll be a blog post on our Medium site. So you'll have a more drawn out written version of everything I'm sharing today. And again, this won't be in the order of like simplest to most complex, but really just kind of, you know, as I ran into it, I took notes of it. So with that out of the way, the first kind of section that I want to talk about are things that involve the PDF Embed API. That's the first thing that I worked with. It's the first thing that got me really excited. I actually looked at it before I joined Adobe, and it just like got me super into wanting to work with all of our services. So one of the things I want to point out is that when you do use the PDF Embed API, you need to sign up for a free key. That's easy to do. That key is going to ask you for a domain name that will lock down that key. That makes it safe for you to use our keys and JavaScript code and have people view source. If they were to take your key, they couldn't run it on their sites because it is locked to a domain. So what I have done when I work on things, when I work locally, I created a PDF credential for localhost. So I have a key that I use locally, and that works fine. And then I have a key for my production environment. So one of the things you may ask, you know, how can I handle writing it locally, committing to a GitHub repository, and then having it work pretty much everywhere? Don't forget that you can use environment variables. And even if you're building a 100% client-side application, so no backend at all, every single one of the single-page applications out there allow you to use environment variables. And I apologize for kind of starting and like in the middle of this deep technical article, but I Googled, for example, how to use environment variables in a Vue.js single-page application, and it absolutely just plain works. So whether you're using Vue, jQuery, React, Angular, etc., all of those build processes will let you use environment variables, and then basically have the exact same code locally that you would have in production. Now that's typically what I do, but another way to handle this is when you do create your credentials, you are allowed to give a top-level domain. So, for example, RaymondCamden.com could be that domain. What you could do then is locally work with dev.yourdomain.com and then work with your system's host file such that if you type in your browser dev.raymondcamden.com, you're going to localhost. How you do that will depend on your operating system of choice. In Windows, there's a text file called host, buried under system32 drivers, etc., I believe. And you basically say, 127.0.01 equals dev.yourdomain.com. And then you could, in that case, hard code that key if you want and have the same key locally that you would have in production. So this is one of those things I think that experienced developers just kind of know because they're used to it, but people who are new to development may not think about. And it's also something that I didn't think about at first when using the Embed API, because to me, I was used to environment variables being more of a server-side thing. So I do that all the time in my Node.js applications. And in fact, I have an example talking about that a bit later. But just keep in mind that if you are doing something entirely client-side, you absolutely can still make use of environment variables. All right, hopefully that makes sense. The next thing I want to show you is, and let me pop into our sample code real quick. So
Hey Ray, while you're kind of jumping in between things, I thought I might jump and just add a little bit of color from our audience here. It looks like the audio is much better. One of the things that Chris mentioned, and thank you, Chris, for mentioning that the text tagging is helpful for Adobe Sign. I think it definitely is a great trick for any of our Adobe Sign customers to use with the document generation tagger. There was also another question that we might want to address here, which was because currently PDF Extract API only works on, or PDF Extract API is the only service that's available with the Python SDK. And the question is whether we expect other SDKs in Python anytime. So Python is definitely a popular language. We do want to get our services available within our SDK. I don't have a committed time frame for you right at the moment of when we're going to provide those, but those are definitely part of what we want to do there because as you mentioned, that's definitely something that our customers want. Back to you, Ray.
All right, cool. One of the things that you'll see in most of our embed examples, and by the way, before I joined Adobe and I'm looking at this, I looked at our marketing pages, and as a developer, I loved them. I loved how clear they were. I loved seeing sample code on the marketing page. It really worked well for me. Most of our sample code will have code that like this. Let me make that a little bit bigger. Column saw like that. And the typical example, and our docs will kind of follow this same format as well, is on the document object, add an event listener for Adobe DC View SDK ready, and then do blah blah blah. This works most of the time. Where it doesn't work is where the event already fired. And I should back up. That event basically fires when our embed library is ready. So you can't do anything until the library is ready. Library fires the event, but you may have a chicken and egg situation where you listen for the event after it has been fired. So what do you do? Well, luckily, let me get to the code real quick. So again, this is kind of our typical example. I rewrote it using a fat arrow function because I am a hipster JavaScript person and I wanted to look fancy. But essentially on this event, run a function called display PDF. What I would suggest instead, most of the time at least, is to do code like this. Let me get it no longer commented. When the event fires, the library will also set a window level variable called Adobe DC. So the only thing I've done based on the sample code is basically said, hey, if this already exists, I'm good to go. Otherwise, add the event listener. In my testing with CodePen, I believe I always had to do this, I think. And for Vue.js, I absolutely always needed to do this. I would typically set things up in a created or mountain event of my Vue.js application. And in those cases, it was definitely a thing where our library was loading before Vue was done and the value was already there. Again, this is not something where I would say, oh, we should change our docs because I really like the simplicity of our docs and it is valid code. But as a practical matter, I would probably say you want to use code like this. You don't have to use the fat arrow function. But I would typically check to see if the library is loaded before you add the event listener. And I will pause for a second to see if anyone has any questions on that. And I'm thinking not. All right, so just carrying on here. One more thing I want to point out, and this was really, really helpful to me when I was learning. My coworker Joel has done awesome things on the internet. Not very many cat or kitten related things. I'm trying to convince him to add more cats to stuff, but he has a whole CodePen collection that is full of multiple examples of working with the Embed API. Typically, when I'm looking at some new particular aspect of the API because I want to learn it, I go to Joel and I say, I don't even ask him, you know, do you have a pin on this? I just ask him, where is your pin on this, so that I could see his code, steal it, take credit for it, etc. But he has a lot of great examples. And just to show you real quick, I'm going to show two in particular because I think that they're good examples. One code pin will show you how to change the default loading screen. So you have this nice green button here. It's going to show the PDF. You click it, and hopefully on the stream, you're seeing that loading icon. That may have been kind of quick. So let me do it again. And if you've never seen CodePen before, not only does it allow you to run and execute live code in your browser, what's nice is that you could take this code, fork it, and modify it. So you can essentially break it, play with it, maybe change the icon. It's an incredibly helpful way to share code and learn code as well. And just to show another example, and again, he has a bunch here. One of the many APIs that we allow you to work with when you're displaying a PDF with the Embed API is that we let you control the search experience. So for example, and I'm not seeing the PDF here. It worked yesterday when I loaded it. There we go. All right. So he has built his own search UI in here. And you could click the search button and you could see it highlighted and navigate. So out of the box, you get a search experience. But if you want to customize it, this is just one of the many things that you could do with the Embed API that really gives you great control over the whole experience of working with PDFs on your website. So again, highly recommend checking out his CodePen, looking at the different examples. Like I said, as I have been learning this stuff and just playing with it, his collection has been invaluable for me to work with. Speaking of playing online, don't forget that we do have a Embed sandbox that lets you see documents and see different examples. We definitely linked to this. This is kind of a known thing, but you know, it's really, really helpful. One of the things that I have a problem with is remembering the different view types. So I will come back here, even though I've been working with the Embed API for a while, to help me remember how things look. I can go here and I can see the different versions of that. And what's great is that you can just click, generate the code, copy and paste that, and you are good to go. So really helpful. You can also upload your own PDF. So this is great where, you know, you're a developer and you want to convince your client, for example, to make use of the Embed API. You could take one of their PDFs, upload it, and then show them how it's going to look. Obviously, it's going to be on our kind of like sample website, but they can get an idea of, you know, what the user experience will be like with their PDF on a web page. So again, dramatic pause to see if we have any questions. Also take a sip of water.
I don't think we have any questions right at the moment. I've been trying to chase after some of the links that you're going to, so we can make sure we make those available. And just so everybody knows, we are going to make those available on demand as part of the YouTube channel. And so we'll add those into the comments of any of the different links. So if you're looking back at those and wondering, and we went too fast, we'll definitely make those available to you. But one of the things that I really love about the PDF Embed API is it's so simple for you to incorporate into just about any website. I mean, it's really simple. It's really quick in the way that it runs. It's a great example of WebAssembly language, which we actually have an article on our on Adobe Tech blog talking about how we used WebAssembly for actually creating the PDF Embed API and so forth. But I don't have any other questions coming. Joel, did you have a comment?
Yeah, I was just going to throw a tip in there, Ray, since you showed the playground. One of the ways that I use the playground is to actually test if my code is the problem or if the PDF is the problem, because not all PDF files are are created the same. They don't all function equally well. And using Adobe Acrobat or Reader as the test of whether your PDF file is good or not isn't really the best way to do that, because Acrobat and Reader will attempt to repair a malformed PDF file. So if a particular PDF file that I get from a customer is not working the way I expect it to, I don't trust my own code well enough to know that it's not something that I'm doing. So if I just want to isolate whether the PDF is the problem or whether the code is the problem, I use that technique of uploading it into our playground, like choosing your file and uploading it. And so many times I'd say it's probably 50% of the time I've uploaded it into the playground and the PDF file is just broken. It's just not, it's not going to work right. So then I can take a look at the file and understand what's going on and really get it, you know. And then there are other times where it really was, you know, some, you know, Ray, you mentioned getting into race conditions where, yeah, it's my code. So it's a really good way, that playground's a really good way to isolate where the issue is.
Yeah. So we also got a question, which was, will this work with PDF portfolio files? Maybe unpack and make contents viewable.
I can take that one.
Go ahead.
Yeah. So so a PDF portfolio is just a very special kind of PDF file that has attachments. And I guess it was the spring release, Ben, where we added the attachments API. Again, Ray, I have got a code pen that shows how to navigate attachments in your PDF file. So if you upload a PDF file that is a PDF portfolio, what you'll see for the PDF file that gets displayed is that default page that shows that says, hey, for the best experience, you can download this and open it up in Adobe Acrobat or Reader, and you'll see it as a PDF portfolio. But if you want to see it using Embed API and just be able to navigate around the attachments, I do have a code pen for that. I don't have it handy right now because this question just came in, but what I will do is get a hold of that and send that to Ben so he can put that up on the list. And if we have time at the end, we can actually demonstrate that. But yeah, there is a way to take a PDF portfolio and create a little navigation page that shows all of the attachments. And if you want to do any kind of beautification so that it's nice for people to navigate through those things, you can also use one of our PDF Services APIs to create thumbnails of each one of those PDF files so that they can, you know, have a really beautiful navigation experience, leveraging both the HTML and the embedded PDF. So that is a demo I am working on right now, but you know, I have so many things that I'm trying to get done. But let me get that code pen, and we'll put a link to that for you in the chat bar.
Yeah, and I think we'll probably have a little bit of time, so maybe we can jump on Joel a little bit later and walk through that.
Yeah, if we have time for that, sure.
Yep, sounds good. Thanks for the question. And for everybody else, feel free to ask your questions. Again, we're live here and happy to answer any of them. Back to you, Ray.
I was going to move on to services, but since Joel mentioned errors, I will actually run a file locally, kind of show you just real quick. Where's my browser? Show you what's going to happen if you do mess up. And that file was test1. And so just real quick, this is just, you know, drop a PDF in a div, nothing else going on here. But what I do want to show you is what happened when something goes wrong. To not forget that you can use, we're getting an error there visibly as well, but you can still use your browser console like any other JavaScript library. And if you see issues in there, then that could help you kind of figure out what's going wrong. Although in this case, it's nice and clear that I don't have the proper ID. All right, so now I'm going to switch to server-side code, talk about PDF services. I will warn folks that everything I'm showing is going to be related to Node.js. However, pretty much everything I'm talking about would be applicable to people using .NET, to people using Java. So it's still going to be something to keep in mind. Just keep in mind that I don't know those frameworks, so my demos will focus on Node.js. So one of the first things I want to show is that a month or so ago, we renamed our SDK from tools to services. And our docs actually did a great job of talking about what you have to do in order to use the latest version. And we have a migration guide to PDF services, and it talks about all the different frameworks. And for Node.js, you can see it was incredibly difficult. You had to remove the existing SDK and re-add it. Don't forget, you could do that via the npm command line. And then you had to change one line of code. And by the way, I will point out, a lot of our samples use the exact same name when they create an instance of the Node library. So they're showing here, like, hey, make sure you require the new thing. Our old docs would say const PDF tools SDK. So if you have code that still has, PDF tools SDK, I'm not going to tell anyone if you don't change the variable name and literally just change this. Because in terms of actual code, the only API that changed, or that was not backwards compatible, I should say, because we definitely added stuff, etc. But the only thing not backwards compatible involved the page layout. So if you're not working with page layout, you can literally change a require, make sure you update your package.json via the command line, and you are good to go. So something else I want to talk about, and goes back to environment variables, is, let me get here real quick. So if you look at our documentation, we typically have one way to set the credentials before you make use of our SDK. And the way that works is we create a credentials object, a credentials builder, and then we say, hey, use this local file for your credential information. When you sign up for our APIs, we offer to download that for you, and you will get two files. You will get a JSON file and you'll get a private key. Your JSON file will look something like this. It'll have 5 different variables in it. The 5th variable, private key file, will be a path to your private key. So our examples show, let me get back to it. Our examples show this typically because it's short and sweet and it's pretty simple. However, you may be thinking, well, that works great locally, but in production, I don't want to have 2 files with my credential data, and I definitely don't want to have that in my GitHub repository. Now, for me, like for my demo repository, I added those 2 files to my gitignore file, so I don't have to worry about it. But the good news is that you have a workaround for this. First off, don't forget that in our docs, we have a full SDK API documentation for Node.js and for the other platforms as well. You could find things in here that are too deep for the main documentation. And this is where, when I was digging in here, I found that there is a way to specify all 5 values directly via code. And that looks like this. And I want you to focus on line 13 first, where basically, I have created all 5 variables, and then I can essentially use API methods on the service account credentials builder function to specify things. So a couple things to note here. I'm using env variables. I am a big fan of the .env npm package, and what that lets you do is allows you to create a .env file which can look like name of var equals secret value, like so. And then once .env runs, it says process.env.name of var will equal that secret value. So locally, I'll use a .env file, and in production, I will use real environment variables. There is a .env clone for Python. I haven't looked at that yet. By the way, I am like on day 1 of learning Python and absolutely love it. So I'll give them a shout out to playing with their Python SDK. I think it's really cool. Something to keep in mind, and you will see this in my Amazon article. on the Lambda website, I'm sorry, on the AWS website where I was specifying my keys, they had a form field, right? So what's the name of your environment variable and what's the value of this? And this was a text field. And what I discovered is that I could not enter multiple lines in there. And I'll show you an example of what multiple lines would look like. If we go to Pipedream, that's a service that I use that's kind of fun. I'm gonna go to my profile. I'm gonna go to my environment variables. All right. So one of the things that Pipedream allows you to do is to create environment variables for workflows there. So I have a test one here called secret key. I can reveal it. And you'll notice that this is a text box that allows for line breaks. If we go back to our private key, and then again, this is a fake one, but you can see it's multiple keys. So I can just Control C and paste it in there. If this were a single line text file, that would not work. And I've worked with other services that have the same issue. So this is a bit of a hack, but what I've done in the past is either use my browser console or go into Run.js. That's an application that allows you to execute code locally. And I've done stuff like this, where I pasted in a key into a variable and I used a multi-line string. And then I've done S2, this is horrible code, JSON.stringify s console.log S2, and taken that and copied and pasted. And that should be...
Ray, can you make that a little bit bigger?
Yeah, let's see. Oh, great. I haven't done that in this app, but I'm happy the normal keys work for that. So these should be control ins if I copy that to my browser. Like I said, I've also literally gone into the browser console. Don't forget, you could run arbitrary code in there. I'll do the same thing here and say s equals, did I capitalize that? I sure as heck did. That's fine. S equals JSON.stringify s, and then copy s, and that puts it in my clipboard. So in theory now, in my clipboard, I have a single line. There we go. So that let me put it into Lambda, and again, other services where they want the environmental value to be a single line of text, to use that in my code. And again, that article that just went live today shows an example of it. I had to do something like this, where basically I replace new lines with I replace new lines in text with real new lines, and that makes the key value right. Again, this is absolutely something that our docs shouldn't cover because it's kind of way out there, but that I absolutely ran into when I started putting my sample code locally into production. Whew. Hopefully that made sense, and hopefully that saves you some pain because this one line here took me a little bit to figure out.
So when you're running that script in the JS code there, is it basically just adding \n for every one of the character returns? Is that how it's working?
Yeah, so in theory, if my string was Ray likes cats, it will change it to Ray likes cats.
Got it. Yeah. Okay,
so
cool.
It's an encoded line break. This is a real line break.
Got it. Understood.
And
awesome.
Surprisingly, security credentials are very, important. If you don't get them right, they will tell you bad. Bad boy, don't do that.
So you mentioned for a lot of those applications where they don't have multi-line type of values there, I could also see sometimes for certain database values as well. Sometimes that might be the case as well.
I haven't worked in a database in years and years, but if I were storing it in a field that didn't support multiple lines, then yes, you could fix it that way.
I was curious, as you were working with some of the things with adding it to a Lambda function, did you have any experience how you might maybe use an Amazon key store to store the keys and run that into your script at all?
Yeah, so and I say this in the article, I am extremely new to Lambda. So when I Googled for how to secure keys in AWS, there were multiple answers. No surprise there. They mentioned being able to create environment variables for a Lambda function. So I went with that because it seemed simpler. But that key store thing you mentioned definitely seemed more appropriate for, like, I'm building a big project, I have multiple Lambdas, I need to share keys and stuff like that.
Yeah, definitely. Awesome, cool, thank you.
Yeah, no problem. So another example that I want to share with you, when you look at our docs for PDF services, we have a lot of, add a password, merge two documents, convert a Word document to a PDF. One of the things that I kind of ran into was like, well, what if I want to do two things? So I want to convert a Word doc into a PDF, and then I want to add a password to that. How do you handle that? Because all of our examples are, give me your source file on the file system, I'll do my junk, and when I'm done, you tell me where to save it. And I knew that I could chain that in multiple steps and just keep saving to the file system, but I kept thinking that there has to be a better way of doing that. And it turns out there is, because when you, and I'm kind of jumping in halfway here, but when you work with the SDK, the result of the operation is a file ref object. And if I go back to the SDK docs, there we go. Typically in the examples, we'll see the file ref, and then when we're done, we'll do save as file, and that's how the example ends. And so that's where my mental model was. What I didn't know is that I could just take that file ref, don't save it, and pass it to my next operation. So in this particular Node.js script, I wrote two functions, one called create PDF, which takes a source input and creates a PDF from it. All the code here is pretty much the exact same as our docs. I've just wrapped it in a promise, and I return the file ref object. I never save it. I then wrote another function, a couple of them actually, but we'll look at protect PDF, where I could pass in a file ref and a password, and it does that particular operation. So I have multiple operations here. And if I go back to the code that I wrote, the code to actually use these particular methods, it ends up being pretty simple. So I call a function to create a PDF, in this case from hamlet2.docx. When I'm done with that, that result is a file ref that I could literally then just pass to protect PDF, add the password, and then when I'm done, save it. So if I was needing to do 4 or 5 different things, I could make all of my nice little utility functions just work with a file ref and just pass one to the other. And literally, like, that's it. And again, this is documented. It's there, but I myself didn't see that at first. And it was kind of fun to figure out how to do that. All right, that was my dramatic pause. I'm not hearing anything about questions yet.
Super dramatic. Now, I don't think we have any questions right at the moment. I think people are just sinking in the knowledge right now.
All right. So real quick, a lot of times, like, I'll read docs or something, and it'll say, if you do X, I will do Y. I don't care. I will write code anyway that does that because I need to actually see it. So one of the things that our docs do is talk about how to change the logging for an operation. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to undo my little fix here, call it JSON2. So I have a random script that's using docgen, and I'm going to run it in Visual Studio Code. I make that a little bit bigger. And you'll see it does some verbose logging. It talks about what it's doing. So our docs talk about how for Node.js, we are using a Node.js logging library that allows you to pass the JSON file, and you can see it here, where you can do things like, I want to modify where it goes to, I want to modify how much information. It's going to look in a folder called config for PDF Services SDK log4js config.json. Big breath. Let me rename that back. By the way, something that's actually not in our release notes, this file name did change, and that's a very minor detail, but I may see if I can add that back in, because this used to be PDF tools SDK blah, 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 blah. But you can see how, our default logging behavior is there, including some of my logs. But now that I've essentially turned it off, it's going to be much more quiet. Basically saying, hey, I found the logging, and essentially everything is gone except for the messages that I did. By the way, I have reached out to engineering. I would like to get rid of everything. That's just a little nitpicky thing from my perspective. So it is something that I've requested that we look into. Speaking of our docs, I will say, and I won't show this too much, if you are a new Python developer, where's my file? Here's my file. There it is. Let me close this. We have an example of how to use Python with the Extract API. The example cuts out a lot of the stuff, a lot of the metadata stuff, which for a Python developer, I think that's totally fine. Like as a Node developer, I don't need to see all the required statements. I know they're there. Show me the actual meat of the function. However, I am learning Python and I needed this information. So if you need a full Python script and you're kind of very new to Python and learning it, you can grab this from my repository. Ben, this is not one of the URLs I shared with you initially, but I can do so later. But you can, if you already have your credentials, you could take my Python script and it will run extract. It will take the zip. It will even extract the zip and get the JSON data out. Like for me, I needed a full example that I could run from the command line. I have one. I know we're getting close on time. I'm gonna do one more example. Is that all right?
Go for it.
All right. Let me kind of go back and forth here. All right. So I'm gonna show one more example. This is using document generation and actually serverless. And I'm gonna show it first. Before I show you this demo, let me just say one thing. Adobe did not hire me for my design skills. I'm gonna say that one more time. Adobe,
I can attest to this.
I do not make the pretty. So that being said, keep in mind that what you're about to see is not the prettiest thing in the world. So
you make it a little bit bigger though.
Yes, I can. So what I wanted to demonstrate is a complex invoice creation process that's web-based driven. So you have a form with every single form field out there. I would absolutely break this up into like tabs or an accordion type UI, so it's not so overwhelming. This is a Vue.js application. I preset a lot of the data, so I didn't have to kind of retype it in, but you can see much of the typical invoice type data, who it's billing to, the invoice billing stuff, etc. By the way, this button, that's me using my design skills, so I hope you appreciate it. But I could enter in item details, red, discount, the apples cost $10. I bought 9. So we bought apples, we should switch to thermonuclear missiles, boom, and I'll give you a discount. They cost a bit more, etc. So I'm only going to do 2 line items here. I'm going to click generate PDF. This is now talking to a serverless function running on Pipedream, and it's taking the data that I just sent. It's using our document generation API to create a very nice PDF, and it should be almost done because when I tested before, it was super fast. There we go. I was too impatient. And then using PDF Embed to display the results. So I like this particular example. I don't have time to go over every bit of code in here, but I will share this code and you can see, where's my invoice? Oh, by the way, I stole this pretty Word document from our DocGen Playground, which has very nice looking examples that I could never make quite as pretty as they did. And this was all generated by a Vue.js application running a serverless function on the back end. I will show real quick, and then I'll wrap up. This is the pipe dream workflow that's actually doing all of it, where basically I taken the data that's posted from the Vue.js application and spit it out. One tip I want to share is if you're doing something on the file system and you have to support multiple requests at one time, which should be 99.99% of you in the audience, you typically need to create a unique file name when you save that last PDF or last document in general. For Node.js, I have been a big fan of the Nano ID library. It creates a randomized, safe to use, unique digit. And I take this library and that's small. There we go. Sorry about that. I use it right here on line 42 where I'm done with everything. I save that PDF to a unique ID, and that helps make this more file safe. And then I just essentially spit out the base 64 from it. And that is it. I filled the hour.
All right, cool. Well, thanks, Ray. I wanted to give Joel, I'm going to give you 1 minute because we're going to have to wrap up. Maybe we can circle back to that thing that you mentioned around the with some of the attachments there in the portfolios.
Yeah, sure. Okay, I'll make it really, really fast. First, I apologize. I did not put it on CodePen yet. It was a sample I was still developing on my local machine, but I will be uploading it to CodePen, and I'll make sure that a link gets into the YouTube description when we eventually publish that. But just to show you very quickly what that looks like, I will share my screen and make sure I hit the share button. There we go. Okay, so the idea is here. First, you've got this regular PDF file, and you can see in Acrobat the attachments are over here. In the Embed UI presentation, what I've got is the root PDF file on the left, and all the attachments are listed in the center, and then I've got the view of the attachment over on the right. So we've got two PDF files, a PNG and a CSV file. So if I click on one of the PDF files, the code will actually grab the contents of the PDF and display it. If it's something else, like an image file, it'll display the image. If it's CSV, it'll show the download. The key to making all of this work is like just these two little APIs in the Embed API. First one is to just get the attachments. When you get the attachments, the result is going to be a JSON file that lists the name of the PDF file. If there's a description there from the PDF portfolio, it'll be there. It'll give you the MIME type so you know what kind of file it can be, because PDF portfolios can contain multiple different file types, not just PDF files. And then the second one is just to simply show the attachment. And again, that's really easy. It's in the attachments API. You say, get the attachment APIs, get the attachment buffer, pass in the attachment name, and this is the thing that you want to show. So as you can see, I just, when I'm passing the content, I'm passing it as a promise because it's got to extract that buffer. And then you just show it like it's a normal PDF file. Again, you're just passing it as a promise. So I think I beat the 1 minute mark. Is that true, Ben?
I'm not going to answer that because I don't want you to be disappointed.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, so we're getting to the end here. I want to touch on a couple of different things quickly. First off, if you enjoy what you saw as part of the session today, please subscribe and please go check out the Adobe Document Services available on our website. You can do a free trial again to get started using those APIs, or if you're using things like Microsoft Power Automate, you can also use those within there. And all of them are kind of like a one-stop shop. You can leverage PDF Embed API, our PDF services, document generation, extract, and we have all of our different SDKs available for them. So if you like what you saw and you'd like to see more of the episodes, please follow us on LinkedIn at Adobe Document Cloud. Also, one thing also to note is please also subscribe. If you are on the YouTube side, go ahead and subscribe to Adobe Developers and you'll get notified. Which brings me to one other point to know. We're probably going to be doing a little bit of a rebranding this coming month. So we might be changing the name from Papercuts. So if you don't mind, if you see some different names, some cool names coming up for things, it is us. We are still doing the same stuff, just maybe under a different title. So just to inform you guys on that. And one other thing also is please also check out the Adobe Tech blog, where we're always adding additional information, tools, tips for you to be able to read and so forth. And with that, that's all I have. Thank you so much for coming to the session today. I hope you were able to take a little bit of a nugget from some of the different tips that Ray was so gracious in being able to show some of those different things. So thank you, Ray. And thank you, Joel, for that tip on the PDF portfolios and getting the attachments out of there. With that, that's a wrap. Thank you, everyone, and have a wonderful day, and we'll see you next month.
Thanks a lot.
Bye.